Hey everybody, welcome to Versus. I'm Alan Ng. I'm the editor-in-chief of Film Threat. We got a great show for you today. I'm sorry, I gotta look at this camera here. We got a great show for you today. We are talking about Rebel Moon, and we are talking about Walt Disney and what happened. Has Walt Disney been canceled from the Walt Disney Company? Is he slowly being erased? We've got a great panel here to talk about it. And before we do, let's get into it. As I look for the button, and everything I want to hear is, here we go. Hey everybody! Hey, I've got a great panel here. We're gonna let's just get into it. We'll go around the horn and just have you introduce yourselves. And for some reason, they want me to play that. So let's go around, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and give me a percentage of how much you feel Walt Disney is part of the Walt Disney Company today. We'll start with you, Vash.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. I have been a fan of the show for quite some time. I've been a great fan of yours, so thank you so much for letting me experience all of this. Well, I'm Vash Sky, a proud member of That Park Place and the That Park Place network of shows right there. Make appearances on WW Pro's channel and obviously the main channel, That Park Place. But we just launched a new channel, That Park Place Podcast Online, where we take highlights from the live streams of both WW Pro and That Park Place and slap them on there with exclusive content like the Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you, and also the Genre Guys. So that's been a very, very fun time. But you can find me there and also doing live streams either on That Park Place or on T3PO, as we like to call it, at about 3 Eastern right there on Tuesdays. So definitely check that out for sure.
All right, Jonas, you're up.
Sorry, I was on a different part of the horn than I thought it would be.
Stop staring into my soul, Jonas. Your eyes, man, they're intense. Calm it down.
Look into my eyes. Now look at your man. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't tell me I'm a chicken.
I am the host of That Park Place along with Vash Sky. I also co-host the Pro Show. I'm a producer for Valiant Renegade, who will be joining us shortly. And I would say that Walt Disney, the man himself, has about as much to do with the current Walt Disney Company as George Foreman does with those grills.
All right, WD Pro, go for it.
Hello there, everybody. This is WDW Pro of the WDW Pro channel. Happy to be here. Frequent follower of everything Disney. Valiant, get out of my shot. This is my moment, man. Jeez Louise. Louisiana guys, man, I tell you. It's ruined now. It's ruined. Just bring Valiant on. Valiant, what do you got? What do you got, Valiant?
All right, Valiant.
Never mind. He sucks. Get out of here.
All right.
Nothing. I got nothing. I'm sorry.
I thought you just drank Tabasco. What is this? Water?
I think it's water. That's what the doctor told me.
Let's stick with it. Stick with the water.
Yeah.
All right, Valiant, introduce yourself to our audience.
Valiant Renegade from the channel by the same name. Good to see everybody out there. We put Hollywood through the business and financial lens of reality. And thanks for having me, Alan.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, and the only member of the That Park Place crew, we have Paul. Paul, tell us about yourself.
Well, I have 2 channels, Call Me Chatto and Appalling News. Actually, both of them are appalling.
Jonas, do we own those? Do we own those yet, Jonas?
Not yet. Not yet. We weren't supposed to talk about that until after the show.
You're an aggregator. You're the new Ben Shapiro.
No.
It's wonderful to be invited onto Versus. And as far as your question, I would say that Disney right now actually wants to get rid of the name Disney and rename it entirely. So that's how much they hate Walt. No more Disney.
All right. Well, let's get into this. Let's start off. We got 2 topics basically we're going to go over. The first is Rebel Moon. How many of you guys saw Rebel Moon?
Well, that tells you everything you need to know right there.
Well, great.
I think our experience is shared.
No, you're talking about episode 2.
Yeah, part 2.
Part two. No.
There was a part
so,
one.
so no one saw it. Let's get into the real topic. The erasure of Walt's legacy. Just to let you know that, please hit like, subscribe, do all that stuff. If you're on Rumble, follow, and give us that thumbs up. Also, we got some incredible shows coming up just before we get to our topic. But Wednesday, Danica, Comic Girl 19, is going to be joining us. We're going to talk about Marvel. And then we've got our live stream on Friday. There we go. Let's talk about this. The first thing I want to bring up.
Wait a minute, Alan. Wait a minute. Hold the phone. Have you not thought that the Zack Snyder stuff outside of Rebel Moon has been more entertaining? Obviously, we've loved that stuff where he thinks he's Chris Nolan. That's incredibly entertaining. He should do a show just based on that.
He should. But we're going to talk about Walt Disney.
All right. You're done. Sorry.
We're going to talk about the thing that people really want to talk about. And
Alan is running this show, DW.
I apologize. I know
it's slowly falling from my grasp here. But before we begin, or to open up our discussion of Walt Disney, the real question I want to ask you all is, what did you all think of the Walt Disney documentary that is on Disney Plus, celebrating 100 years of the Walt Disney Company?
Are you talking about the 2020 special?
No, I'm talking about the fact that there is no Walt Disney documentary.
There's no Walt.
Celebrating the 100 years of
exactly.
the Walt Disney Company. And so that brings up the question here.
Wasn't that called Wish?
Yeah. Where is Walt? It just seems like, I've always felt like the inevitability one day is that we're going to get that hashtag cancel Walt. How close are we to that with the Walt Disney Company?
Well, they are looking to partner up with the hardware company DeWalt, and that way they can just deal with sliding them away, and they can give kids power tools, so they can cut off their own Johnnies. And never mind that. I didn't know where that.
They're
was
Pinocchios, Paul. They're Pinocchios.
There you go.
Yes.
I did a video. I think I don't know how many people cottoned onto the notion that Disney was bereft of Walt for the 100th anniversary. It did. I went, wait a second, and someone who has been involved in developing shows. Part of developing shows is that you got to market them. And you take a look at your calendar and you go, okay, how many different things, how many individuals can I second to promote this thing that I'm trying to promote? I mean, promotion is the most important thing you can do with any kind of entertainment entity. And we talked about not repackaging the old classic movies and showing them and bringing back whatever remaining living voiceover talent was involved, like just the endless ideas for celebrating Disney's 100th anniversary. We could come up with just a phenomenal slate of ideas that would, and more than anything else, it would generate goodwill for Disney. They hate the man so much that they couldn't even bring themselves to exploit his memory to generate goodwill for the existing company. Like, this is the most absurd thing that crossed my mind. I was just ridiculous.
Let me answer it with a question. Are we at the point now where there's more Walt created content with a disclaimer on it on Disney Plus now than there is just stuff you can watch?
More than likely. Yes, you can enjoy this with a straight family.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have reported that not only did they do that to Aladdin, but now Aladdin is no longer available on the kids accounts.
Take that, Robin.
That's very true. For those who aren't aware of this, if you go to the kids section on the junior mode on Disney Plus, you cannot access the original Aladdin. And if you go to watch it on the adults side, it has a sensitivity warning on the beginning of it.
And what other 90s era Ashman and Menken movies are available on the kids side?
Well, let's see.
Is Little Mermaid still there?
Prouder and Prouder on there. Let's see. I know for a fact that Disney Junior Muppet Babies is on there, and that's the one where Gonzo is a preschool version of Gonzo, by the way, convinces the rest of the Muppet Babies to accept him for wearing a very sparkly, I would say, kind of a drag queen looking dress there. Not played for laughs.
No, I'm just curious if from the kids' side, if they actually did the same thing with like the Lion King, Little Mermaid. I truly don't know.
I think Lion King's still there. Beauty and the Beast is still there. I'm not sure about Little Mermaid, though. There's a few things in Little Mermaid that, given how cringy we are in today's society about things that once upon a time were universally loved, there's a few things in Little Mermaid maybe it's not, but I'm not so certain on that one. But Aladdin, you know, there are people of European descent playing people of Middle Eastern ancestry, and ethnicity, and so that's a no-go. And of course, Robin Williams was not actually blue, so all around offensive.
So let me ask you.
Don't make the joke, Paul. I know what you're doing up there. I know.
Let me ask you this. This is something that I've hypothesized about the live action remakes, but the sense I got, at least after Cinderella, was that the live action remakes were Disney's attempt basically to correct Walt, to take everything that was problematic, so-called problematic in the originals, and to fix them and correct them. Would you agree with that? And would you think, I'll probably lead you with this, but have they gone too far?
Well, let's start with Jeff Daniels, who is the star of that atrocity, 101 Dalmatians. No, we're probably going to pull this forward a little bit to Alice in Wonderland, which I think that's mostly fine, except that they made Alice an epic girl boss in those. She's literally fighting a dragon herself. I wouldn't call that woke, but it's definitely more on the feminist side. And then as we get closer, Beauty and the Beast, starring Emma Watson. That one is, I think Emma Watson actually got to change the script herself and made Belle, who's supposed to be this stranger, a little bit of a weirdo, a little bit of a closet case that doesn't fit in. They made it so that everyone hates her, not because she's book smart, but because she's a feminist. And that woman's been doing too much learning. And
they got rid of that great song, Gaston's song.
Oh, man, fantastic song.
They got rid of it. Was one of the most popular songs in the house. We were marching around the house singing that song.
Edith said too many eggs. You can't sing about it.
Howard Ashman and Alan Menken don't seem to be, well, obviously Howard Ashman is not doing much work for the Disney company these days for obvious reasons, but Alan Menken and the work that he's done since, I want to say Aladdin was their last collaboration. Since then, he's done fantastic stuff, but there's something that's happened in the more recent years where he doesn't seem to be called on as much. All of that Broadway style stuff that they used to do. They called him in for Aladdin, the live action version, and it's the most bizarre thing. They make the subplot, which it should be a subplot, but it ends up being the main plot of Aladdin, is that Jasmine is told to be voiceless, and she's a woman, so therefore she doesn't have a voice. I guess it didn't occur to them that they have another Disney live action remake coming around the bend that is literally about a woman who gives up her voice, that being The Little Mermaid.
Right.
But they stop in the middle of the movie to talk about how women need to be able to speak in this movie that is about a street rat and his magic genie that grants him superpowers in his fight against a wizard.
Well, let me give you guys an example. No, go ahead, Vash. You haven't had a good chance. Go for it.
Well, no, I was just going to say that Alan Menken did do work recently, but not for Disney. In fact, did work for Skydance under John Lasseter. Interestingly, is scoring the film Spellbound for them. So, again, either it's rejection or cast-offs or whatever. They have found work, just not under the Mouse House. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is, if you want to see how Disney has transformed themselves with these live actions, where, as Alan said, they're doing them not only as a cheap and easy cash grab because it's a nostalgia play, but also they're using them as virtue signals. Look no further than go back to 1997, okay? Back when the world was sane. And in 1997, Disney put out a live-action remake. It was Cinderella, and it starred Brandy, a woman of African descent, as Cinderella, and nobody cared. And well, let me change that. People actually probably liked the movie. It was decently received, a 6.7 on IMDb, 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, although who knows what that means. But it was not a giant kerfuffle. There wasn't a cultural clash. So many people today say, oh, we were a horrid people of ists and phobes back then. Well, then explain that. And now, today, what happens? Well, Disney goes with The Little Mermaid, and the entire thing is marketed and circled around and defended upon racial lines. And they do that to do a vapid virtue signal. And so it creates this faux appearance that culture is terrible and society is bad, when in fact what it is it's Disney marketing rage. And then they want to say that, shows like this and channels like ours foment that sort of thing. But no, we would like Disney to go back to the Cinderella creative
We should
company.
stick to Alan's question. I don't know if that answers Alan's question. Let's
Well,
not I'll get off the rails here.
Yeah.
Are these attempts to correct faults in the original movies? Are the live actions, again, they're erasing Walt one bit at a time. It kind of reminds me of the scene in Back to the Future, where he's trying to, kiss. He's trying to get the guy to kiss his the girl, so he doesn't disappear from the frame on the picture.
So let me offer a 15-second clarification on my part. What I was attempting to do there was, Cinderella is done into a live action with a complete racial switch, but it didn't change the vision of Walt. And that's why there wasn't damage, and that's why the market accepted it. It had nothing to do with race. It had to do with capturing Walt's vision. The players didn't matter as much. With The Little Mermaid, they do change Walt's vision. Now, he wasn't there for The Little Mermaid, the original, but the idea of what Disney is, they change it, and then they make sure that you have a hard time criticizing that change by wrapping it in a defense that's pre-made of, you're a bad person, you're a horrible individual if you disagree with us on leaving the Disney tradition.
It's definitely an opportunity, right, to change these films, because it's done under the auspices of, well, we have to give a reason for this thing to exist. So let's change it up just a little bit in order to justify itself. And then what do? They change it in ways that are inconsistent with Walt's vision, or do some other thing to virtue signal or to correct Walt's vision, right? Well, Walt Disney of the past doesn't represent us today. Let's go ahead and take this in a brand new direction, for a modern era, as we've heard so much about, right? It's fascinating how much the company has stripped Walt Disney in general from the company. For example, in 2011, they took out Walt Disney from Walt Disney Pictures, the logo, the opening logo that precedes every single Walt Disney film in theaters. For the 1960, or was it the 67th anniversary of Disneyland, they didn't play Walt's speech on Disneyland's birthday right there on July 17th. That was odd. We heard about ideas of taking Walt out of Walt Disney World and just making it Disney World. If, in fact, for the 50th anniversary of that resort's celebration, they didn't have much of Walt until they had to imbue it into the front of Enchantment, kicking and screaming there. But that didn't happen until many months later, until right before that pyrotechnic spectacular was taken down. We're seeing some odd places where they're just stripping out Walt Disney as much as they can in order to enact a new vision consistent with the Disney brand, not necessarily Disney the man.
It's the full silence that, to me, is most telling. The utter silence.
Yeah.
They just must hate the man.
Yeah, I can liken it to basically Bing Bong from Inside Out. The more you cast him aside, the more you forget about him, the faster he'll just completely disappear, and that Walt Disney will just become two words instead of a legacy. Let me bring in our last special guest, Lorena Creole.
Lorena.
Hello. Hey everyone. How you doing?
Hi, Lorena.
Really good.
It's good.
Hi.
Good.
Thanks for joining us. In fact, you came at just the right time. I want to pose this question to everybody. But what is it? What was it about Walt Disney when he first started 100 years ago with Snow White, and then his legacy? What is it about that storytelling that resonates with the public today, or resonated with the public back then, that the company is not doing today?
Well,
Why was Walt so successful then compared to the company now?
I would say that there's a clear delineation of good and evil in everything that Walt Disney himself made. There is good and there is bad, and maybe Shere Khan is a tiger and he's an enemy, but they do a pretty good job of making him villainous. When we look at stuff like Wish or Strange World or even Encanto, Encanto, the villain is generational trauma, and the villain, there's a difference here between the evil queen, Maleficent, and my grandma, who is the villain of Encanto, or sorry, a grandma that is the villain of Encanto, or Strange World, where the villain is the white fathers or the white grandfather. And it's all about climate change and that we need to get with the times and destroy our energy sources and use different energy sources, or Wish, which is a statement on, again, it seems to be a statement on the patriarchy. Someone has built a world, but they didn't fully actualize this woman's grandfather, and so she decides she needs to tear down the entire system. It's very great. Or even Ralph Breaks the Internet. The villain is literally insecurity. Whereas if you go back to, I'm trying to think the last one that actually had a villain. Frozen, they threw a villain in there, I think because they forgot to by the end of it. Wreck-It Ralph, so 2012, we're 11 years or so from having an actual villain. Oh, well, maybe Zootopia. But again, Zootopia, the villain is racism in Zootopia. An actual villain, we're about 10 years removed from that. So there's just this decay within the company. Whereas Walt Disney, you can just go down the list. I mean, the vaguest one you have in the early films is Man in Bambi. Generally speaking, you have some delicious villain that everyone knows they're evil, and they understand them so well that you can actually enjoy watching them chew the scenery a little bit.
Well, in Wreck-It Ralph, I think the evil person was Sarah Silverman because she sucked in it.
How do you like at the end of that film? She says, "We need a democracy," and the first thing she does is declare herself president of the arcade.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I will say that there was a villain in the first one. It was the King.
Yes,
but it was Wreck-It Ralph Breaks the Internet that there wasn't a villain,
Right.
Well, and to me that seemed
Ralph
to
was the villain.
The first one, yeah. But to your point, it's there was a symbol, there was an object of evil in that, and the question is why is that so important? Why is having a villain so important? And what is it doing to storytelling today that there is no villain?
Let me can I adjust your question just a little bit in that
Sure.
Obviously tastes have changed, society has changed, we're a little bit more hyperkinetic, we're a little less open to maybe just falling into some just nice tropes and enjoying them. I think we're a much more cynical population at large. I'm not entirely certain that if they released the original, let's say Cinderella, whether it would be as popular now as it was back then. So, I mean, obviously things have to be modernized, but to what degree and in what direction to be able to, you take a look at what Illumination is doing, right? They're kicking ass. Should Disney be doing that kind of stuff?
Well, I think when it comes to Disney, and I'll just pop in here, the clash between good and evil is something that is universal. And when you talk about cynicism, one of the things that seems to be lost in society as well, and it's pretty obvious, the denial that evil in itself exists and is very real. Walt Disney was a master storyteller in doing that. The villains were clearly villainous. The heroes were clearly heroes. And there wasn't this muddy, thing going on in the middle. What I will say about Illumination, not that Disney has to do the same thing, but Illumination has actually taken the lessons of Walt Disney, old school Walt Disney, and updated it for a modern era. But at the crux of those Illumination movies, you've got appreciation of family, clearly who's evil and clearly who's good. I think the medium has changed, just like Pixar did. But at the crux of all the technology, you had a story that people could relate to, stories that people didn't feel that they would have to, at the end, answer questions from their kids that was way above, their maturity level to be able to handle. So that's why I think Illumination is seriously kicking ass right now, because at the crux of it, just like with Walt Disney, it was about great storytelling that could appeal to you no matter who you are. Because with the princess movies, and I love the princess movies, which is why it pisses me off how they just, modern Disney has wiped its ass with the princess franchise. It was that thing of, it's not on the outside, but it's what's on the inside that counts. And that's so universal. And Disney's gotten away from that, and other companies have picked that up, like Illumination and others, Bluey, hello, and run, and have run with that. So while we are, more cynical, I don't know if it's more cynical. I'll just go from my limited amount of young knowledge, and I'll just say that there's definitely that cynicism that is out there. But on the other side of the spectrum, you have people who want those whole
Well, the
stories.
young kids aren't cynical yet, and Disney is not serving them.
Well, they get Bluey. Disney just doesn't own it.
Yeah.
And it's 1/3 of all the streaming on Disney Plus. But Alan, to answer your question about do we need a villain, it's a philosophical question, but it's answerable. And the answer to do we need a villain in storytelling, you have to say, well, what is storytelling for? And it's essentially for people to role play overcoming conflicts and challenges. So you can go back to gathering around the campfire at night, and you tell about your successful hunt, and you put a hero there, and you role play as the hero, and that prevents you from having to learn those hard lessons yourself. And the more sophisticated the story, you might say, the more sophisticated the lesson that might be embedded in that story. For simplicity's sake, as a child, for example, you don't tell a child all of the rules of the ethics about delayed gratification. You tell them about the little red hen, and embedded in that is this role-playing story that they get to experience why it's good to store away value. And the reason that you often need a villain, although it's not totally necessary, is that in terms of conflict, a villain represents malevolence. And so the reason that you want to overcome malevolence is because there's not really much more painful than malevolence. So a natural disaster hurts, and a disease that's not your fault hurts. But when someone, and more specifically closer to you, hurts you, and they do it intentionally, and then you add on a layer of that, maybe you were doing the right thing when they did it. That is so painful that it affects people for the rest of their lives in ways they don't even comprehend. And so if you can distill that into a character and then overcome that in any story, and it can be a cartoon or it can be something deeply profound that only adults watch or what have you, but that's the reason you need a villain, is because you need the malevolent force that you role play against, so that you might be better equipped when you face that actual malevolent force that could rise up the snake in the garden idea.
Now, Pro, you've said something here that I think is great. And I've observed in the first 15 years of Pixar, say, starting with Toy Story in 1995, going all the way to, say, Toy Story 3, you have a lot of plots, whether it's A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Incredibles, Cars, Ratatouille, WALL-E, Up in particular. These are all things that if you wanted to, you could boil them down to a small children's book, like a board book for a small child, and have your essential elements here. Now, of course, over an hour and a half on average, you can have a rich story with characters and all of this. And someone always learns a lesson. So someone always learns a deeper truth. Obviously, Woody's journey, which they completely corrupted by the time they got to the fourth one, there was accepting his place in the world and learning something new about himself. The first one, essentially, Woody is the circumstances of the villain. Woody is kind of the villain of the first one, except you're telling it from the perspective of the main character. I think that John Lasseter, and Disney was setting him up in this way, whether or not they realized it, as the next Walt Disney of the company. And it's
Yeah.
probably the best $7 billion that Bob Iger ever spent of the Walt Disney Company's money. When he became the chief creative officer, putting him in charge of not only Pixar, but also Walt Disney Animation and also the parks. And he was there until 2018. This is the rise of this company. You had someone with clear standards, with an eye for commerce, and you had someone who had incredible storytelling instincts. And the more they followed those instincts, it seems the more money they made. And if that money is a metric of connecting with the audience, this is a guy who knows how to connect with an audience if he's given the right platform here. So if he was the second coming of Walt Disney, and their own promotional materials towards the end indicated that that's where they were pointed, then I would say that is them pushing even farther against this. A lone creative leader that is not the guy with the checkbook pushing all of their decisions. They prefer their Stan Lees, and they prefer their Jim Hensons, and they prefer their Walt Disneys, because those three people have a lot more in common than John Lasseter or George Lucas being alive. They prefer these creators to be something that they can puppet. They want a holographic Uncle Walt that they can parade around the park. They can't do that with George Lucas yet. Well, they did try to do
they'll find a way.
It is funny that they didn't try to retcon Walt. That they could have done that.
In what way?
The 100th anniversary did feature an AI hologram Walt, right?
Right,
tour,
and they messed that up so much. The mannerisms on that thing were so incorrect. They mistook a guy holding a cigarette and turned it into something a little bit more foppish. I'll put it that way.
Well, and to Jonas's point, Howard Stark, when you first saw him in Iron Man 2. He was a better dead-on duplication of Walt than that AI thing. I'm just like, I swear I'm looking at Walt Disney here.
I think that was a parody of Walt Disney.
I think you're correct. It's
because
you're saying it's intentional, and I think you're right.
They showed a maquette of his city.
Yeah,
that I went, this is totally Walt.
Right.
His vision for this future.
Yeah,
I went,
the whole
oh my God,
this
is future land, Walt's future land.
But of course, that was under Jon Favreau, who is a great storyteller. That this
so you could get where that was coming from.
And irony.
Right.
I mean, it's not that Walt didn't have his detractors, nor he didn't have his warts. A lot of talented people left him because they couldn't stand working with him anymore. But on the other hand, maybe a little bit of truth and understanding of just where he stands, but I don't see how anyone can wipe Walt away. Like, it's the dumbest thing. I mean, not even for Disney's purposes. How much has Disney influenced businesses, other creative individuals, other businesses? I mean, his reach is enormous. It's global, and to just disappear him is hilarious.
Well, let me ask this. Is it though? Because when I look recently, we'll say over the past 15, 20 years, Disney is no longer the leader that they used to be in technology, in leadership, in how to treat, your workers. You have other companies that have sprung up since then who are taking those lessons and using them in their own way. So I can kind of see it from that way. But as for like Walt Disney himself, it's like his legacy seems to fade further and further and further into the background. Disney no longer has that, that halo around themselves in IT circles. And I can tell you this as someone who's an IT professional, Disney IT is a joke. It's the biggest technology turkey. Every time we would go to parks, we come back. We're like, let me tell you what happened when I was at Disney World. This broke. This wasn't connected. This wasn't connected. And they're just not. Now,
all of it in Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah, because that wasn't working Friday. When I got there,
as a resistance.
It was.
Now, Vash, you were going to say something, I think.
Oh, sorry. Minnie.
Lorena Creel was absolutely right about that IT stuff. I've been complaining about that for years, but that's a whole other ball of wax right there. But no, I mean, look, I think we touched on something really, really interesting here. I think Walt Disney definitely embodied the values of something like Joseph Campbell, right? These kind of, modern myths, but these stories that touched all of us, that resonated with all of us, that we could all relate to, right? Good and evil, definitely a big part of it, but heroes and villains for sure, the hero's journey and all of that, these like what Pro was saying, these stories where you would have these instances where you'd sit by the fire and bring everybody together. Walt Disney definitely he definitely had those qualities in his stories for sure. But when you have these people working at the company right now who are let's say they're activists, right? Who have their own agenda, who have their own teachings, who have their own philosophies. And you see somebody like a Walt Disney who is maybe the antithesis of that, and definitely what he would espouse and teach and so forth. Well, then it makes sense why you'd want to remove that influence, certainly from the company. Now, it doesn't make any sense to us for sure. It's delusional to think that you could remove this unbelievable influence from this company, and just an amazing man, just in general, just outside the company, outside of all of that, an incredible mind, a genius talent, a once in a 100-year personality, right? To remove that, though, you can see how people might be influenced to do that, who might have an incentive to do that, and that's what's really troublesome.
Well, you bring up something really. You bring up something interesting, because the question I now have is Walt Disney's audience. Who was Walt Disney speaking to when he was making Snow White, when he was making Mary Poppins, when he was making the Aristocats, versus who is the Walt Disney Company's audience, and who are they trying to reach out to with movies like Strange World and Wish?
Well, on the second one, it's childless millennials. Hopefully dual income, no kids. And we see the numbers seem to bear that out as they add more bars to the parks. People who are chasing some aspect of their childhood that they feel was unfulfilled, although most people would assume, based on their behavior, that they were probably, in fact, coddled and had a robust childhood.
I could tell you stories.
I think, to everybody's point here, Lorena especially, they'll pretty much have, albeit divorced, Walt from the Disney company within the next 10 years, maybe sooner. It's already begun. Everybody's cited the examples of why, slowly little pieces of Walt being erased here and there. You have to remember, to a not insignificant portion of the people who now lead the Walt Disney Company, unfortunately, Walt is a problematic figure.
And why? What would be the big ones?
Yeah, well,
why, in your estimation, is he problematic?
He's
I think,
love the country.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Walt was a big American family kind of guy. He's white. He's male. We can go down the list for all the kind of modern folk that we're bringing in to work at these companies. And what I mean by modern folk is people who just have a very left-leaning view of the world. A lot of them look at the horrible patriarchy and America bad and all this.
Well, they would have said he was an anti-Semite, except that now I don't think that they view that as a negative.
Well, there's that.
Or call him a racist. That's the other one.
That's the other one too.
The hard facts.
We've seen it so many times in different places in the country where historical figures just kind of slowly get erased because, they came from a different era. Or you know what? This movie may not be suitable on the kids' side of Disney Plus because it was done in an era where there were racial stereotypes or whatever kind of disclaimers they're putting in front of movies now, right? It's that slow erasure. The company itself trades under the ticker symbol DIS, D-I-S. People know it as Disney. Have you not noticed in the last couple of decades the Walt in the Walt Disney Company has slowly disappeared? It's just been slowly rebranded as simply Disney. The Disney name will continue to be attached to the company, but people will just know it as the name Disney. It's a powerful brand in of itself. The fact that it was once an individual, a dreamer that founded it, named Walt, well, we don't need that anymore. That's just going to go away. You watch.
They prefer, and Valiant's spot on, they prefer Walt as an emoji. He is a nice character to come out in bronzed form, sitting on a bench, looking ahead at a castle or a pond with a cartoon mouse beside him. But in terms of the actual historical man, very little interest in going forward with that at all. And I agree with Valiant. It's going to be Disney. It's not going to be Walt Disney. And if they could, they'd love for it to be Iger's Disney organization.
Yeah,
I
do
think it's amazing that Main Street USA Disney lasted intact for as long as it did. Quite honestly, it needs a refresh. Universal is actually the model of where you want to go with this kind of stuff. I am shocked that Main Street USA, that image. Well,
Frontierland.
If there wasn't
Frontierland
so much
is going away,
and if
Tom
there wasn't
Sawyer's
so much
Island
in that specific part of each one of those castle parks, I'm sure it would have been changed a long time ago.
Yeah,
and look, the name of the company, I don't think they're going to refile with the SEC to change it. We're no longer the Walt Disney Company, but I think that just slowly over time, the de facto result from a marketing perspective is going to be the final erasure of the name Walt attached to Disney.
Yep.
I've tried to make this point many times, especially over the last few weeks, as they go towards Disney Plus and try to make that a general entertainment brand, because Bob Iger came in and I guess he suddenly realized that general entertainment actually makes a lot of money, that people watch all this stuff that we've been making over the last 50 years to 60 years of Disney television. They want Disney to be as evocative as Netflix. Netflix is a brand name only. It is something that is synonymous with a huge stack of intellectual properties that you can just tune in and watch. Jurassic World is currently on Disney Plus. Deadpool is currently on Disney Plus. I think they still have not figured out what that Disney tile is supposed to be on Disney Plus, if it stands for something other than, well, this is the collection of our animated stuff. I think if you go in there, you might also find things that weren't made by the Walt Disney Company. They want you to view them about the same way as you view the cable company, but they want you to like it a lot more.
See, I think they're actually even going past Netflix, because Netflix is not embedding into their app a gambling service. And Disney's plan with ESPN is to make it synonymous with sports betting. So Disney's far beyond Netflix, in my opinion, in where they want to go.
You mentioned Disneyland before, and it's bears repeating that hard facts.
And the hard facts.
He's talking about the hard facts that have created America, with the hope that it will be a source of joy and inspiration for all the world. That's in the speech. Right? What happens right after that speech is given? It's a prayer to open Disneyland that first day right there. So you have an Americana park. You have somebody who embodies the American ideal. You have somebody who's very religious. He talks about how, if you tore up my spine, you'd see that there's a, red, white, and blue stripe running right down it. Anybody remember the House of Un-American Activities Committee? I think Sean Green.
Joe McCarthy.
Yeah, I remember that.
Can we get Joe McCarthy back, please?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Walt Disney was very influential in that, and despised the red faction there. That is for sure. So he embodies all these characteristics and so forth, and is, obviously imbued that into his work, where you can kind of see like, oh, okay, well, if that's what he's all about, yeah, we like the character of Walt, and that's what he's been resigned to, one of their characters in the long line of characters. We don't like the individual or the man, which is really unfortunate. And there were times when the company kind of played around with imbuing more Walt into these things. I remember sitting in a panel for Buena Vista Street, and when they were redoing the entrance to Disney California Adventure back in the day for its 2012 redo right there, where they talked about how, I think it was Ray Spencer, Imagineer, who said, in our research, we found that young people today didn't even know that Walt Disney was a man. at all and just thought he was a brand. And so it was really important that they imbue that into Buena Vista Street like they did. But those actions were few and far between, unfortunately.
Jonas, you might mention something that I really liked, and that was you talked about the brandy version of Cinderella, but then in 2015 they brought out the Kenneth Branagh version. So I would suggest that to not piss off anybody, they do a person of color version and a white version of each live action. That's my thing.
Well, let's be fair. That the brandy version, I think one of the main reasons the brandy version works so well is because of the love of the source material. This is a Rodgers and Hammerstein.
She could
musical.
sing, and she's unbelievably cute.
Yeah, and they held true to the original story.
Yeah.
Other than the race swapping, it was
Wait,
Rodgers and Hammerstein.
You're putting meat on my joke, and I find that offensive.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
one thing make sense of my joke.
One thing I will point out, as far as the live action remakes go, there's very few of them that are actually based on films that were Walt. Snow White is obviously forthcoming, and the comments on the red carpet were, or whatever color the D23 carpet were. Well, it's not 1937 anymore. And we're not going to have this movie that is very much about, someday my prince will come. By the way,
they could do it. I mean, Branagh did a good job in 2000.
Yeah, I think Cinderella is the only one that was a true live action remake of the original classic.
Well, you know why? It's pretty easy for Kenneth Branagh. He's been making live action remakes of source material that's 400 years old for his entire career. He hasn't changed Shakespeare at all.
But to get back to the Brandy Cinderella, Rodgers and Hammerstein, nobody gave a crap really that it was a race swap. You don't know why? Because they cared that it was Brandy and freaking Whitney Houston were in it.
That's it.
That is what the big draw was, and why people liked it, because they wanted to see these two people together.
It was pure commercial. It was a commercial play.
Absolutely.
And they held true to the play. They didn't change the play. They didn't change the music. They didn't feel certain lyrics were problematic and then needed to be changed. They did the musical.
Brandy and Whitney Houston were like two of the most popular people at that point too. So I mean, that was just all. It's like you said, that was commercial, and that was let's get the kids in.
Kids
here.
look up Moesha. That's all.
And the opening interviews didn't have Brandy and Whitney coming out and saying we're receiving death threats. And that was your opening marketing salvo.
Although we do know that anyone of that level of celebrity definitely has that excuse, because they're just weirdos out in the world. That's the fact that they always leave out whenever they go after the trolls.
Okay, before we transition, I want to ask you the thinker question. Then we'll get to chats and super chats. But here's the thinker question: what is it about Walt Disney's brand of storytelling that you miss today and wish the current company would incorporate?
The simplicity and honesty.
Elaborate.
In the for all the reasons you guys talked about before, how the story was clear delineations between good and evil. They just imparted simple, wholesome, traditional, I'm sorry, this offends people, Western values out there of family and individualism and honor. I mean, look, they were timeless. There's nothing timeless anymore coming out of Disney, at least none that I can think of in the last at least decade, if not more.
So I'll put it this way. There's
you next.
Walt was an absolute genius, and you can't take it away from him. He has a ho-hum kind of way of speeching. He never comes across as braggadocious. I don't know if that was the way he was privately, but publicly, he's good old Uncle Walt. But in terms of the level of genius that you see, he was a master of taking archetype and symbolism. So set the movies and the shorts and the cartoons aside for a moment, and just walk down Main Street with me in a Disney park. And let me just explain how he tells a story in a theme park. Take me about 2 minutes. First of all, you enter through the curtains as if you're going into a theatrical production, but the curtains are the arched gateways underneath the train station, right? And he loves trains, so that's the intro. Yeah. You walk through into Main Street USA, which is a callback to his childhood. It's a callback to nostalgia because he's in a post-World War II era looking back at what he considers to be the golden times. And it's a combination of childhood innocence and American capitalism coming together to form entrepreneurialism. And at the end of that concept, he views that as leading you into a place of bounty, which is, or what would you say, plentifulness, because there's a giant garden and there's a castle, and beyond the castle are all the dreams and stories that he's come up with. That's fantasy land, right? And so that's genius in and of itself. But as you come back out of the park to leave, the walkway in Main Street is ever so slightly less elevated, so that you actually walk down just a little bit. So as you're walking down, which gives you that feeling of walking down off the mountain, the credits for this experience you've had are on the Main Street windows. That's so genius. And that's what we're missing, because when you destroy meritocracy and you go in favor instead of tribalism and resegregation, then the end product sucks. And you can't shoehorn in something like Wish, which is utterly artificial, and make us think that it's the genius of the original. It doesn't work. It is a cheap copy, and it is not worthy of somebody like Walt, and that's what we miss. It's what we had, by the way, when John Lasseter was running it. For all his vices that might be, Lasseter had the genius, and that's what we're missing.
You know, to tag on actually to what Pro was saying, I've brought this up numerous times, how influential Walt Disney was on my family. A rural Black family that lived in Jim Crow South in the middle of nowhere, pretty much in Florida. They would watch The Wonderful World of Disney every Sunday. Why? In addition to the storytelling, the hopeful messages that were given every single week. So when my mom found out Walt Disney was building a park in Florida, they went opening day. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, they all went. And walking through Main Street is an experience like no other. It's a throwback, of course, to back in time. But here's something else I'm going to add, and people probably have never thought about this. Main Street USA shows the turn of the century in America. At the turn of the century in America, you had a class of Black people you had grandparents who were slaves, who were emancipated. You had Black people who were born free. You had businesses that were booming, creating their own businesses, serious leaps in literacy, and joining the American dream at that point in time. And I think a lot of people don't know that, but that's also what I see when I go down Main Street USA, where you had a group of people who were historically excluded for the most part, now included in that American dream.
Absolutely.
That's all I got to say.
If we can push back to, Film Threat, you guys are you're a little bit more coarse than I usually am on my channel. Maybe that's
you could say darn, Jonas. Darn's allowed on this channel. We went over this.
I know. But
Drop the F-bomb. Drop the F-bomb right now. Do it.
Oh my! I just had to record a whole video.
Oh, come on, Jonas. Fact. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this the Deadpool trailer where we have to mark it?
I haven't seen the trailer yet.
Oh, it's
just 3 F-bombs.
Imagine a Deadpool trailer, the last one that didn't have any cursing. Remove more of the humor, add Hugh Jackman, and then just throw the F word in there about 12 times, and then you've got the trailer. It's not that good. Anyway.
So the Marvel version of Goodfellas, right?
Ooh, well, I would say they meant it more in Goodfellas.
Okay.
So the thing I wanted to point out here is, okay, first film, Snow White. Second film, Pinocchio. That's one that Walt wanted to make. By the way, not available in the kids section of Disney Plus.
Of course.
Jiminy Cricket. The entire company is founded on when you wish upon a star, it makes no difference who you are. So equality. Anything your heart desires will come to you. If your heart is in your dream, no request is too extreme. When you wish upon a star, as dreamers too. And the song is hopeful. It acknowledges that maybe there's something that you want more that is out there. Or you could go to the most recent Disney film, This Wish, which, Alan, you know how I love to bring up the lyrics of This Wish. So I make this wish to have so much more for us than this. It's clumsy, it's awkward, it's entitled. And that describes where Walt Disney used to be and where Walt Disney, the company, is now. They don't even know what they want. They just know that they don't like what they are right now.
Definitely a hopeful future for sure, as Lorena was pointing out right there. Think about Walt's vision for the future tomorrow, Carousel Progress and everything like that. But Tomorrowland, those presentations as part of the Disneyland television show and Wonderful World of Disney shows, this was at a time when, their nuclear war was on everybody's mind. But Walt was there to assure you, hey, it's going to be awesome in the future. And let's go ahead and, illustrate some of these concepts out like that, and got people really passionate about that stuff. And I think hope is definitely missing. Also romance, it's
Oh my.
as
missing.
right, isn't it? It's profound, right? You
Patriarchy.
You watch a modern anime or something, and you're like, whoa, romantic.
As important
things.
as capitalism is to Disney, early on, that really wasn't its main theme. And to riff on what Lorena was saying, an awful lot of people, Disney World was not expensive at the very beginning. And a lot of people came from places in the United States where Main Street was something like they've never seen before. It's not like the condos that, it's like everybody has got so much, and we've got stuff that's cheap. My parents would save 5 years just to get a couch. None of that exists anymore. There's people without, no question, but I think there's more people with too much, and on stretched credit. But when Disney World first opened, I remember Main Street was nothing like I'd ever seen before. It was fairyland on its own, and it showed not just a past, but again, it showed a possibility.
Yes.
That didn't exist for a lot of people at the time, and it wasn't a hugely expensive place to go. I think that's actually one of the problems with it is that you just can't keep upping the prices and thinking that people are going to enjoy their experience there.
That was a strategic change they made circa 2017, where they decided to start aiming for the global elites as opposed to the average everyday North American.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's really problematic, because Disney, as commercial as he was, did a fairly good job of not making it feel ridiculously commercial.
Well, remember what they were looking at around 2017, though. They were looking into launching what would become a multi-billion-dollar black hole of a streaming service. They were
they needed cash.
They were beginning negotiations for buying Fox for over $70 billion. This capital had to come from somewhere. And at some point, they realized, well, we are a publicly traded company. And we also recognize that this global brand brings in a lot of people from international travel who come in and per capita spend far more than the folks that live in Florida.
Yep.
Forget California for a minute, because nobody goes to California from international by comparison to Orlando. They just don't.
Very true.
It is a dumpy little park compared to what's in Florida, period.
That it is.
So you have, go to Orlando and see how many tourists are there from Korea and Japan. They're flying into LA and then hopping to Dallas and then to Orlando. They are skipping right over that dumpster fire.
Yeah,
especially after the first of the year.
So
Disneyland was a definite locals park.
And the point is that they figured out they can start raising the prices because, and I talked about this in a video now probably must have been, I bet, almost 2 years ago now, called The Price Elasticity of Disney, or something along those lines. But it was about the elasticity, the economic elasticity of Disney prices. And I said in that video, I said, Disney is testing the waters to see how far they can stretch the rubber band of price elasticity before it snaps. And they were still well within that bounds. I think we're starting to see the snapping now, but it depends on how much more they can get people to keep coming in. But the point is, that's where it went from being, you know, an experience for the everyday average everyman, you know, especially because, look, they were U.S.-based parks, and in the beginning, for the first several decades, you didn't have a lot of international travel. That's changed in the last couple of decades. So now, again, with all the international parks and everything else, they're catering to a much broader global demographic. And they need to just keep raking in dollars as much as possible, and that's where it's changed. They realize, hey, we have limited capacity here. So we can go up to $300 a day for a park ticket, and even though it's going to piss off a lot of our regulars, guess what? We still have enough audience out there in that income bracket willing to pay the money to come in here and fill the parks to a level of capacity that we're comfortable with. And if we need to, we'll just cut the amount of staff back a little bit to compensate. And y'all know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And so we can increase the margins that we're earning from the park. I talked about this on my live show yesterday. I brought this up because we were talking about something semi-related. You know, you look at, I think it was in the live show yesterday. You look at the percentage of overall OI, the operating income of the Walt Disney Company, and it has radically changed in 2019 or 2017, 2018 in there. 39% of all the OI for the Walt Disney Company came from theme parks and experiences. Today, it's almost 69% of OI comes from theme parks and experiences. And the
that's
reason
why they're subsidizing Disney Plus.
Well, it's because of the cord cutting. They're losing their big cash machine that has been the case, that came from that $10 a month that every cable subscriber in America was paying on their bill to Disney, whether you realize it or not.
Jonas, how much have they spent on Disney Plus since 2019?
Well, they would say 14 billion. They're at
14 billion is cumulative
loss.
Loss. Yeah.
They have
right. We would add Hulu to that and say 30 since they're integrating it. But
right.
But
and
on
of
total,
course, they spent $70 billion purchasing Fox, and they say that that's for streaming, even though 3/4 of that is for Fox linear assets. So typical Disney. Typical linear channels like that you would click through with the remote on a regular television. So, I mean, we could say it's in the $100 billion range if we really wanted to.
So that's what I was looking for. So here's the reason I say that is because this is a company with a market cap of $205 billion. This is a company that since 2019, let's just make it be $100 billion, okay? They spent $100 billion on a streaming service that has never made a profit. And it's down $30 billion in losses if you add Hulu, which we should. So, of course, they have to increase the prices on the parks to unsustainable levels because their bad decisions have put them in a place where they have to subsidize this horrible all-in bet they made that has failed through the parks. That's what's going on here.
Right, which is why the parks are dying, because they had to put all that money towards Disney Plus so that they can become a cable company. They can reinvent themselves as a cable company.
Think about the juxtaposition between the current strategy, as VR just so beautifully mentioned, and the reasons why. Definitely got to give Pro credit on that one. Think about the juxtaposition between the current mentality and Walt's mentality back in the day, keeping the cost for parking at basically a quarter up until like the 1970s, interestingly enough. But now, we're seeing prices just out of control. Genie Plus being as much as 40 per person per day. We're seeing, I think even people are starting to react to this. For example, Magic Keys at Disneyland. This is the longest that they have gone since the program's introduction in August of 2022. August of 2021, actually. Since that program was launched, this is the longest period in time where those have been on sale. And now they have placards outside, in the front of the park saying, "Hey, upgrade your experience to a Magic Key, upgrade your experience to a Magic Key," because they're trying to get that revenue stream. We're seeing crazy price elasticity at Walt Disney World with 30% off of hotel stays for some people. Visa card holders, for example, are getting free dining. Disney Plus subscribers are getting free dining plans and so forth, trying to encourage people to come in there. We just saw a Wall Street Journal article suggest that a report from Moffat Nathanson say that with Epic Universe opening next year, that could cannibalize Disney's park attendance by 1 million over that first year, which is incredible right there, as people find alternatives to the Disney experience, because frankly, they've just simply been, as Nelson Peltz put it, over-earning at that division for sure. And in the process, people are kind of reevaluating the value that comes with going to a Disney experience and reevaluating other alternatives that are out there. So we're seeing this in a big way as the company gets away from Walt Disney.
Let me pause the conversation, because I do want to transition into the business. The Walt Disney, the businessman, versus what we've been talking earlier about the Walt Disney, the artist, the storyteller. But by means of transition, let's go to the chat real quick here. Hello, chat. Torgo the White has been a member for 2 months. Thanks. Not sure what those symbols are. Clock and a flag. Epic Mike. Rebel Moon sucks ass. All right.
What's up, Mike?
That was our first topic.
Wrong.
I think that was its promotional cut line.
I think so. Yeah, sucks ass. From Chris Gore, great panel. Yeah.
Hey,
Chris Gore is a big fan of you guys.
Thanks, Chris. Wait. What? Is he still around?
Oh,
aren't you supposed to be on a beach somewhere?
Yeah. I think so. Well, truth be told, he's doing better, and he will be back soon, and we'll know when he gets better. All right.
Love you, Chris.
But of course, Chris, that wasn't the intro video. Yeah, I know. I hit the wrong one. I got confused. Didn't practice. Patrick Lemire. What if Iger stays another 5 years? They will pull Walt's statue from the park. Disney Japan at least still idolizes Walt. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine Bob Iger and Mickey holding hands in front of at the hub of Disneyland? Wouldn't that be awesome? Okay, no.
Well, I mean, if you want to answer that question, Bob Iger isn't leaving anytime soon. He's supposed to leave in 2026. The likelihood of that seems pretty low. He's got 4 stated candidates for the CEO position before they weigh the external ones. There's 2 more that are somewhat likely. That would be Kevin Mayer and Tom Staggs. He's probably not going anywhere. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that Valiant's not mentioning the crucial fact here. His contract officially goes to like 2031 or something like that before he's completely out of the company. Now, he may not be in the same capacity until 2031, but he is still technically on retainer through the end of the decade and a little farther.
Yeah. By the way, who approves his contracts?
Mary Elena Lagamasino approves his pay packages, and then the 12 people on the board that you guys can't get rid of those. They're very crucial.
So the people that Bob Iger installed are the ones that approves his pay.
Well, there's usually a consultant that is brought in that has an expertise on compensation.
Yeah. A cultural consultant. Yes.
Correct.
Wonder who pays that.
Patrick Lemire also says at least Disney Japan told Disney corporate to pound sand when the proposed redoing Splash Mountain. The only real Disney park will end up being in Japan.
Well, they just finally learned to pronounce splash, and they just,
I don't think so. I think they still pronounce it Sprash.
Splash Mountain.
Ooh, Splash Mountain.
All right, here we go. Mega YouTube 99 for $4.99. Thank you for supporting the channel. Unrelated, but I have a comedy recommendation for Paul. Please Don't Destroy: The Treasure of Foggy Mountain, streaming on Amazon. I believe that's streaming on Peacock,
which I don't get. What's it called? Please Don't Destroy.
Please Don't Destroy. These are 3 writers on Saturday Night Live right now, and they did a movie that no one's watching.
Oh, the brand new thing. Yes, I saw the beginning of it. Yes, the 3 white guys actually that Saturday Night Live.
There is a ginger in there, so
there is.
There's a
yes. I started watching it. Is it okay? It didn't it kind of was off for me at the very beginning, but I
Mhm.
might dive back in if you think it's good.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
in
we'll talk
Canada,
about
it's
it.
it's on Prime in Canada.
Ah,
Yeah. Well, Paul, we'll talk about it on the first.
okay. So then that's that's one of my
Yeah, I guess I'll have
assignments.
to watch it too. Then.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. From Red French Moon for €5. Thank you. Haven't the colleges in the West produced enough woke soldiers for key positions in entertainment and corporate? Can we get back Disney or look elsewhere? Yeah, at this moment, I guess we're looking elsewhere. From Bookmark for £10. Get well soon, Chris. Another chapter in the Frank Gore legend. P.S. Disney Plus sucks harder than a Wizard of Oz tornado.
Which you don't like
Good.
Earth Day offerings here?
Yeah, I'm just saying good imagery, by the way. From James Raschuti for $4.99. Thank you very much for the support. All of my favorite daily YouTubers in one place. Great stream today. Hey Chris, love your brother. Be well. No one's.
When I heard he collapsed from a stroke, I thought he was in Vegas and getting stroked. But that's what caused him to collapse.
I think it was a combination of a lot of things that did it. For Puck 971 for $10.
I hope he doesn't die now, because that'll feel really bad.
I know.
Jesus.
I know. I would say that the harder my jokes get will indicate the sooner he'll be back. For Puck 971 for $10. We are DINK, Dink. That must stand for something.
Dual income, no kids.
There we go. You white people. We are Dink. I am forced to go to Disney every year because of my GF girlfriend. I got that one. It's her childhood. She is finally getting annoyed with Disney changing Splash Mountain. Sadly, I will be going again this year.
Broccoli Hill.
Like I used to
on a Salt Dome adventure.
Yeah,
in the bayou, but
floral explosion.
No magnolias. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
you guys are gonna love the lighting at nighttime. It's glorious.
Yeah,
well,
every color of the rainbow.
The one thing,
all the concept art.
The one thing I'll say about the anachronism of Disney World or Disneyland, when I took my daughter when she was 3, I mean, how many different Americana references are relevant to a Canadian from Toronto, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Her favorite thing was Bear Jamboree. So she doesn't know anything about Appalachian music or banjos or things like that, or singing bears. I know you guys have that in the United States, but I mean,
in San Francisco,
there's so many things about Disney World that had nothing to do with us, and maybe many of them were anachronistic even, but my daughter loved it all. Like, let's not undersell those things that aren't really happening anymore. I had to take her to Bear Jamboree 5 frickin' times.
That shows amazing.
I'll tell you when I was a kid, when I was a kid and I went to Disneyland year after year, it was our annual family trip. The first ride we always went on was America Sings. It was not just because we loved robots and this elaborate show. America Sings was this elaborate show featuring robots, trying to figure out how they changed scenes constantly, how this rotating room worked, but also it was the music, starting from the early start of America all the way to contemporary rock and roll.
But don't forget that Disney started in the time of Broadway too, Broadway and vaudeville, and all these things were really important. We have lost a huge amount of comedy. We can talk about that later, because there's no longer any Broadway comedy. Like the Kaufman and Hart, the Marx Brothers, there's the amount of comedy that was on Broadway. That was one of the factories that fed the movies. Arsenic and Old Lace, that was a Broadway production. You Can't Take It With You, The Man Who Came to Dinner, all these things came from Broadway.
Yeah, funny thing happened on the way to the Forum.
Yes, came from Broadway. And what's happening on Broadway now with regards to comedy? So we'll talk about that later. It's one of my
Broadway's doing what Disney's doing, and it's just remaking live action movies.
It's a good thing they're preserving those old audio animatronics from America Sings. I'm so
no.
glad that they've taken and lovingly preserving those. It's just gonna be.
I'm
great.
just hoping I could buy it at auction at some point.
If there's a Showbiz pizza place anywhere still open, I'm sending Paul right now.
Yeah, there you go. The other normie for $5. Does anyone else make parallels to Dogma's movie when thinking of Disney? Who saw Dogma?
Ooh,
I saw
I did.
Dogma.
I loved
Yeah,
Dogma.
Loved
I
it.
did.
Last good
Yeah.
thing Kevin did.
Yeah, and you can't see it anymore.
I have the disc.
Yes, that's the only way. From Christopher Moonlight Productions, I've been checking LinkedIn listings for Netflix, and they're all hiring a lot of graphic and production designers, almost as if they're gearing up for something. I might apply.
A lot
Hmm.
of IT folks as
Yeah.
well. I'm
I don't know
noticing
if you
that on LinkedIn.
I don't know if you saw my story on Friday, but the publicist, the Walt Disney publicist, won Publicist of the Year many times.
Yes.
He is going to Netflix to work with their awards department in their animation segment. And in the article, it ends with a quote saying that the reason he's moving to Netflix is because of his love for animation.
I know. I heard that. You said I heard that bit.
They got
He's leaving
Skydance.
Disney. He's leaving Disney because he loves animation.
Oh
Oh,
my
my.
goodness gracious!
Oh,
Think
wow.
about that.
Yeah.
Well, when I left the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, or the Canadian Broadcorping Castration, after 3 years, after 3 years, the room was filled with every single department head, and the president of English Language Television, Denny,
Villeneuve.
Denny Harvey. You turned to me and said, "Paul, you're leaving. What's the final thing you'd like to say?" And I said, "It's been a great 3 years, but it's time that I return to the creative community."
Ooh.
There you go.
Oh, silence.
Absolute.
Absolute silence.
Wow.
Jason Webster for $5 Australian.
I was very proud of myself.
Good job. I like the Lucas Star Wars prequels. Yeah, I mean, I like them too. Now Disney's Rise of Skywalker and Rebel Moon has made the Phantom Menace look like Citizen Kane. I know.
I mean, it's so bad.
Wow.
Here we go. Are you an angel? Okay.
Works every
I
Wow,
know.
that was just like Asian Jake Lloyd right there.
Oh, man.
Well, here we go. Kiss My Grits for $10.
Hey.
I was part of many Disney 100 meetings, and all I'll say is that there were no cohesive vision. Projects were siloed, and celebrating Walt wasn't at the forefront of any
Wow.
discussion. It was an embarrassment.
Wow.
I mean, again,
Oh,
the
wow.
easiest thing you could have done was made
Wow.
a documentary about Walt Disney and the 100 years of the company. That
How
Run it on
hard?
all
ABC.
there.
how
could've-
And the original doc that they
Yeah,
just rerun it?
yeah.
right.
But at least we have the reluctant dragon.
He doesn't matter anymore to them.
He does.
He's irrelevant.
Yep.
All right, the
Another
Kill Kit
character in
Geek.
the library.
What's the panelists' thoughts on Song of the South, and should it be released? Anyone but Lorena, you can name.
Okay. Y'all know what I'm going to say.
No, Lorena, go for it. What's your thoughts on Song of the South?
I do not believe that it is the racist film that some detractors are saying that it is. I find the people who say that either one, truly have not watched the film, or they've watched it and it's completely gone over their heads. Should it be released? Absolutely. I find it interesting that Song of the South is kept in the vault, but Peter Pan, who has some obvious racist references to American Indians, that's allowed.
It's a historical atrocity. Oh,
and
look at-
and
look
there's
at that.
grooming in it.
I had
on-
that one. Oh, my book's down there. The spine coming off.
It's not a book.
Oh, is that the
Oh,
vinyl?
was that the LP?
That's the
that one?
vinyl.
The
That's the LP.
vinyl?
That's
Oh,
the
yeah, that's
original.
Oh,
The
I'm
film
so
is
And in
great.
great
I
condition.
just want to point that out.
And I still have the
especially from
laser disc safely tucked away.
Yeah. From a technical
Yeah.
standpoint, the film is great. From a storytelling perspective, it's classic Walt Disney, as in Walt the man himself. I wouldn't compare it to Mary Poppins because Mary Poppins is the pinnacle of Walt's filmmaking achievements. He was only the producer on that, by the way. Someone else directed it. Don DeGrati, probably.
Interesting movie with Tom Hanks with that one.
Yes, there was, and that was about as close to being honest as about Walt as they will ever get for modern Disney. But Song of the South is a great little time capsule here. It's idyllic because everything that Walt made was idyllic. So of course, if somebody's going to say that he was saying something idyllic about slavery, they're going to have a problem with that. It's not slavery. It's post-Reconstruction. The guy comes and goes as he pleases. And it also includes a liberal white woman who gets to preach at the black guy about how dangerous he is to tell his stories to the children. So there's a little bit of accidental cultural commentary on today.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you have an interview with Tony Baxter about Splash Mountain, and I think you also have an interview with James Baskett's daughter about.
Valerie Stewart. We have never interviewed Tony Baxter, but we have second or third hand collected some excellent quotes from.
Oh, okay.
Second.
just getting off the racial side of things, because I'm a tech guy. There's a fantastic video by Corridor Crew that talks about the innovation.
Oh yeah,
that they included. They didn't innovate that particular thing, but the sulfur lighting. Instead of using green screens.
That's an amazing video.
Sodium lighting instead of green screens. It is fascinating just how much better they were able to cut the edges off. On the when they were trying to cut those characters.
You didn't have green screen bleeding.
Background. Yeah, don't get the green screen bleeding. I would recommend that anybody who's a tech nerd watch that video, because Disney 60 some odd years ago was farther ahead than they are now.
That video was incredible. It's probably the video of the month for me. I recommend it to everybody. But I just want to say, James Baskett played Uncle Remus. James Baskett was the first African-American man to win an Academy Award. It is a historical atrocity that the work of the first African-American man to win an Academy Award is unavailable to the public. That is wrong. If it's offensive, fine. Put disclaimers on it. But the public should be able to see a very historical film that matters tremendously to the history of motion pictures. It's wrong that it's not available. Disney should fix it. They know they should fix it. Bob Iger has some sort of strange emotional hang-up about it. And if they did show it, their problem would be that the masses would realize that the worst thing in it is little black children and little white children. And I don't even like the labels white and black because it puts you as far away from each other as possible. But it has children of different ethnicities holding hands and walking together. And frankly, I think we could use that today.
Tony Baxter just recently gave an interview saying that when in the lead up to opening Splash Mountain, or at least working on it, they reran it in theaters just to kind of give it a test, see what happened. It did better than it did previous. I think this was back in 1986. No outrage, no nothing. People were really proud of the film. Zippy Doo Dah was the anthem for the parks for decades. You would hear that piece of music behind documentary material and so forth. It should absolutely be re-released. I don't think it should be contained in the vault. The problem is that there's been this mystique built on the fact that it isn't widely available. So people can say whatever they want about it, and nobody can check them on that because they don't have the actual source material to
outrage is a business.
It's also on YouTube.
Yeah. I also think that they're still writing the sensitivity warning that will be in front of it. And,
novel.
They're about 100 pages in. So
3 hours of disclaimer footage.
After I read Huckleberry Finn to both my kids when they were very young, I think the disclaimer today would be, this book is way too complicated for you morons to understand. It's the English in it is at such a high level. It is so beautifully written. But I remember when I was reading it going, wow, this is not like the Da Vinci Code, which I believe is written at a 5-year-old level.
Yeah. I mean, I think Disney could definitely make a lot of money, not only re-releasing it, but, make that documentary. talk about how problematic people see it.
But you know what? I think, but that also makes the assumption that people can't figure this out for themselves.
I know, but present that here. Look, I'll tell you. There's a podcast called "You Must Remember This." It's hosted by Ryan Johnson's wife, but she gives it's a 4-part series on Song of the South, and I think it's fairly balanced. You know, she presents both sides of the issues, and in the end, it's just kind of come up with your own conclusions about.
Well, here's a fun one for you guys. I'll put money on this. I'll wager that a re-release of Song of the South would turn a bigger profit than the Ray movie.
Agreed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
In fact, why don't you re-release it, but show special scenes from the Ray movie after the movie?
Well, the re-release of Shrek 2 outgrossed all those releases of the 3D pictures, recent 3D pictures that Disney put into the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That was a mess. From Baba Yagi for $5. Baba Yagi. May this $5 go to healing Chris's brain. We all know that his condition happened while he was watching a private screening of Rebel Moon 2.
Oh,
yes. Yeah.
Too soon.
It wasn't those spaceships that were exploding. Okay.
Yes,
from that park
we
place.
only have high-class stuff on this show.
Speaking of Ginger Bears,
From That Park Place. I don't know which one of you did this.
It was me.
But I think Chris still died. And then finally from Jimmy Francis, the most technical mistake Alan does, the faster Chris will be back. Yeah. I know Chris is like, I need to get back there.
I got to come back.
He can't even play the right video.
Alan is doing such a terrible job that I have to come back. It's so terrible. I'm Chris Gore.
That's why most of my conversations with Chris right now are over text. And all right. So let's move into the Disney.
My face isn't working,
Disney.
but it'll come back later.
I just want to say that after what Paul did, I felt more safe putting in my super chat. So
All I can say is, Chris, you look surprised.
So, let's go into the business of Disney. Yes,
The business of Disney. I like that.
yes. There we go. All right. I've been saying this a lot on the Film Threat podcast live stream, but I've visited the Walt Disney Museum a couple of years ago, and one of the things that stuck out to me was the fact that throughout Walt's entire life, he was always on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yes.
Snow White was, almost wasn't finished, and they had to borrow a lot of money from the bank to get it done. And that it seemed like his entire life he was always battling something that was going to put the company under. Compared to today, where I think the phrase "too big to fail" applies. Give me your thoughts on that in the sense, and kind of bring it around to, is Disney too big to fail, or can failure? Can they reach new heights of failure?
Well, they're going to test that, Alan. They're giving it their darndest to test it out. But on Walt, I'll just say this. Walt did something very, very strange. And I don't know that it's advisable, but it's why we read about him, is because it's so bizarre. He bet the house over and over and over. Mm-hmm. It's not that he was facing bankruptcy because he was a bad businessman or because his brother was poor at accounting. He faced bankruptcy over and over again because he went all in repeatedly. And the only way that he becomes this icon of America is if he also wins every single time. And, that's the story that we all tell now, or at least we used to before Disney started erasing him.
I just want to add to what you talked about. Walt Disney mortgaged his own house and got approved for ridiculous lines of credit. And then they needed even more in order to finish Snow White. And without the profits for Snow White, which thankfully did not wipe Disney off the face of the earth, he parlayed that into even greater animation achievements. And if he lost control of the animation division somewhere in the 40s when they unionized. He kind of escaped off to Brazil and Mexico, and he did a kind of a goodwill tour and let his brother run the company for him because he could not stand that he lost control of the thing that built the company. And when he came back, I think I forget what movie they finally finished all that union stuff. So there's an indication there that losing control of animation is what pushed him into television, which of course was in order to fund the Walt Disney parks. And of course, Imagineering came out of the funds for Mary Poppins, which was very much in his control and not directly a product of Walt Disney feature animation. So he's a guy that even within his own company, he still had to fight to make things happen within there. The company itself now is a bloated mess that they can't make a movie under $150 million. And after that, they need to spend at least 100 to 125 million marketing it. Right. So they don't make small moves anymore. They have to make huge moves that have to be approved by not just the person who wants to make it. They also have to be approved by the department and approved by the studio head, and then up to the C-suite, and then Bob Iger. Bob Iger is saying that he watches every single film. He's on record on interviews saying he watches every single film they make 5 times. There is no circumstance in which one person making a movie needs to run it to the studio head, then the C-suite, and then Bob Iger contributing his creative thoughts on these things. Absolutely ridiculous. I'm top heavy doesn't begin to describe what is wrong with this company right now. So no wonder he doesn't believe that anyone else can run this company. So, sorry, what was the question here?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Here's the distinction I'll make. Because Walt Disney was always on the verge of losing everything, there was this need to make movies that appeal to the broadest audience possible, because that's the only way these movies are going to make money. Because he wanted everybody to watch it. If you were a parent and you had children, he wanted the entire family to go see this movie. That doesn't seem to be the philosophy of what's coming out of Disney today. They don't. It's kind of like they don't want you to come see their movies. They want to tell stories that will teach your children things. And I think that's the problem the current company faces.
But think about the reasons as to why Walt wanted to earn as much money as possible. It wasn't just for his own pocketbook. It was to create more of what he wanted to create. He has a bunch of quotes out there saying, I look at money a little bit differently. It's just a means to an end for me. It's just a way to facilitate my dreams. It's
hookers and low.
That's right. Bet the whole
false
farm.
Definition.
Bet the whole farm on Disneyland, right? Even cashed in his own life insurance policy in order to pay for the Mark Twain. We all know that story, and it's absolutely incredible. But he had to essentially convince all these other companies to take a stake in Disneyland in order to get that thing built. It wasn't just to ABC, but it was a myriad of companies that he had to convince to do that. And so the Walt Disney Company, I don't think owned at all a majority stake, and nor did he. But right when it opened, it's like, you have C.V. Wood, the master builder of Disneyland, or at least that's what the title he likes to claim, going out and doing his own theme park, I think Freedom Land at the time. And he's like, you know what, we can't fall behind the 8 ball on this. We have to invest even more. Roy's going, are you serious? We just got this operation built and funded. We have to think about owning a little bit more of this pie back. We can't think about investing heavily into this. Don't worry. It's okay. We're going to go ahead and do this. And Roy's like, look, I got to go to a trip for a little while. When I get back, we can talk about it. Walt turns to his guys and says, don't listen to my brother. We're doing Big E tickets. First of all, we're doing the Matterhorn, we're doing the submarine voyage, and we're doing the monorail, and which is just unthinkable. I mean, millions and millions of dollars poured into this park that just opened only 4 years prior, because he's just committed to be in this rat race and to compete on this level. And C.V. Wood, they had the opening festivities of these amazing attractions in 1959. Looks to his boys and says, See that mountain right there, fellas? That is the biggest middle finger you'll ever see. And it was Walt laying down his stakes. Look, I'm going to bet it all. I'm going to believe in myself and do it over and over again. Not because I want to, necessarily make a profit on all these things and be rich myself, but in order to be able to build more things that I want to build. And all of that was leading to the culmination of Epcot, which is so unfortunate because as soon as he gets a stable place of income that is Disneyland, he passes away.
Well, you know,
and sorry, Val, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but to tag on to what Vash was saying about Walt and his dreams. Guess how he was coming up with Walt Disney World? Why? Because when he opened Disneyland and all of the sprawl and dealing with the city of Anaheim, and he's just like, you know what? I got a different idea. And he tells, Roy about it. And Roy's like, well, where are you going to get the money for it? And he's like, I don't know. That's your problem. That's your problem to get the money for it. So he's like, I want this big, huge next incarnation. I want to do it. I want to do it on a bigger scale, something that's never really been seen before. And that was a vision that they had, so much so that when Walt Disney passed away, I truly believe Roy put so much into it. And there's a plaque right there. I call it, no, it's not the mosh pit, at the front of Main Street, USA, where there's that plaque with Roy Disney's dedication of Walt Disney, dedicated to his brother. And, not too long after Walt Disney World got up and running, Roy passed away, but he wanted to make his brother's next biggest dream come true.
It's not Disney World, it's Walt Disney World.
He had to prove it. And, he did it in phases, and you guys were talking about it. Look, in 37, right, was Snow White. Bet the farm on that. It was a big success, and it set him up for being able to prove to people that he could do it. And it was just a few years later, it was 1940, when he took the Walt Disney Company, well, back then we would call public now, but he went over the counter with it, and he sold shares of stock in Disney for the first time. But it wasn't until 1957, right around the time Disneyland opened, when he actually got together with Goldman Sachs, who helped him do the IPO, the initial public offering of what was formerly Walt Disney Productions in 1940, and then in 1957 they did the actual IPO for Disney. And that's where a lot of that capital came for the expansion, like Vash was just talking about, when they started adding all the big stuff to Disneyland. And that continued inflow of public capital, because by that point he had the brand and he had the faith of investors out there. It's like, no, this guy can really make some crazy good stuff. And when they IPO'd in 1957, the money flowed in. And all of that capital that came in from selling shares of Disney stock and going public, that's what helped the expansion. And that's also what helped lever up to where they could get to, what was it, 10 years later or whatever, when they started looking at Disney World and started planning that out. And, of course, the infamous Reedy Creek PAC in 1967. So, it was 10 years later. But all of that is what built to that moment. And that was to me, Walt, the business genius. He knew how to do it, but he had to have brass balls the size of grapefruits to do what he did financially to himself. He constantly put himself at risk, but it worked because he kept believing in it, and he knew he had something that America wanted.
And now Bob Iger is lowering the amount that they're going to spend on each of their productions. And he wants everybody to know for sure that they've totally fixed the creative engine. They fired the one guy that they were telling him to do all the live action reboots, and they've replaced him with the guy at Fox. And the guy at Fox said, no, we're not going to do any more of those, except that we definitely are going to do a bunch more of those. So don't worry, guys. Company's totally fixed. No more safe choices. Just keep buying tickets.
There you go.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Very sad. Very sad.
It's so sad because you see Walt Disney and like Valiant just said, when they went public, and obviously now you have shareholders that you had to you have a board that you have to speak to now and so forth. That was a really contentious time as well. because Walt, obviously he understood the monetary value in doing something like that, but he felt that he was losing a little bit of control. And so when his brother came to him and said, okay, you've been using company resources in order to fund Disneyland and its projects, but the company doesn't necessarily own Disneyland. Now we have to own it. And now we have to own WDI and or at that point, WED. Walt and Roy didn't speak to each other for about 6 months over that issue. I mean, it was really, really contentious because he valued control far more than he valued money. And he valued the bringing these things to life. Like I said, a lot more than actually putting, greenbacks in his pocketbook. I mean, that's kind of the guy Walt was, who believed in the vision more than the economic reality of the situation.
I just want to add, as a business person who's built businesses, it's really dangerous to try to follow the lead of iconoclasts because it's the exception, not the rule. You Americans love those Fortune 500 magazine covers that talks about the one guy that started from nowhere and built the thing, and Walmart or whatever it happens to be, dollar store. These aren't typical. There's ways to build businesses in a very logical, prudent fashion. Walt is a great example of really what not to do as far as I'm concerned.
Like I said, go
ahead, Pro.
Bet everything over and over and over. I mean, it would not work for 99.99% of the people. It's
Correct.
the reason he's a legend is because whether by his own, maybe the guy was just that amazing. Maybe there's some mixture of luck, probably, but whatever it is, out of all the people who've ever done that, he's one of the only ones who came out on top every single time.
Yeah, was it every single time?
on the
big
I
ones.
believe was a big one.
You could say
on
that
betting
Steve
the
Jobs
entire thing
was a fantastic visionary too, but he had his ups and downs.
Yeah.
Speaking of which,
Fantasia, Sleeping Beauty was a big one, like $6 million production.
Well, Fantasia was a flop.
That
Fantasia
didn't
was
do
a
well.
flop. Was a massive flop.
Yeah, but he was definitely dreaming with not only Fantasia, but also with Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty. In terms of trying to progress and trying to, progress the art form. And it failed.
And not just that. He was, again, technology, all the animatronics, also trying to preserve what America was about with the Hall of the Presidents.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not going to find that anyplace else. You can't underestimate what he was trying to do as a preserver of American culture and America's past.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
he
listen, you guys.
said with the Hall of Presidents, he's like, "Hey, listen, if we have to charge everybody who comes in there $0.25 to see it in order to get this thing built, that's what I'm going to do because it was so important to him that those things be preserved, that you could actually see all the presidents there." I mean, it was just remarkable.
And ultimately, the cost got out of hand because we kept having more presidents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And sometimes the wrong one won. And, they have to pivot.
For Disney security.
Yeah.
But we won't go into that.
But the thing that, listening to you guys talk about this, just the fact that, the language we use regarding money, and it sounds like there was not a lot of it, and that for some reason it's hard to get and it's hard to make, and it just doesn't feel like that's a problem that the Walt Disney Company has at the moment. For some reason, they have an unlimited source of supply of money somewhere, or there's some kind of creative accounting going on that it just doesn't. That I think that sets that company so far from the normal people like us who have to struggle day to day to make a dollar. And I think that's what, to me, is what I connect most with Walt Disney, is that, even though he's this genius, it just felt like he struggled just like us, and that he wanted to kind of make that connection with us that this current company just doesn't seem to want to do.
Think about the life experience too. He was an ambulance driver in World War I.
Yes.
Went through the Great Depression, obviously.
Went through
he was
depression
working
himself.
from age 8?
Yeah. Went through Yeah, he went through depression himself, right, Smash?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, when did odd jobs? I mean, as far as he could actually walk, as soon as he could actually walk, it just moved across the country several times before settling stakes in California. Yes, went through the Depression and so forth. Went through another World War. Just the life experience of the guy before he was even 40.
Vash,
It's just
you're
insane.
overselling it. My kid went into one class in high school that did not have a rainbow flag. Like, oh my God! Like listen, everything is relative.
Everything is relative, but
Yeah.
then
I mean,
that was the
look,
story
I
of his
mean-
animators as well.
I mean, come on. Bob Iger had to give us the weather.
Weather.
Yeah.
That's right.
He had to.
Weatherman.
He had to either forecast the weather or read whatever the person who forecasts the weather told him to say. I mean, that's to me that's the American dream, and Bob Iger has. I mean,
Really
let's
connected to that everyman.
yeah. Please get that partner statue with Bob Iger and Mickey.
You know,
It's coming.
It's kind of reassuring to me that the only move that Bob Iger does successfully is purchasing someone else's company.
That's
And,
it.
and there's no other company out there that is up for sale that can fix his problems this time. Last time it was Lucasfilm. Look how well that went. Marvel, okay, they pulled in Kevin Feige, but also they pulled in Ike Perlmutter and Alan Fine. Those are two names that are definitely undersold. And then of course Pixar with John Lasseter. He also has a string of very awful purchases like Maker Studios pulling in all those guys there. They were lucky at the time that they were doing that. I'm not saying they're bad people. It was not what Disney thought they were buying. There is no company out there that Bob Iger could say, we're going to throw down a check right now and we're going to get this person and he is going to fix all of our problems. It just doesn't exist for this company right now. So they have to transform, and they're doing the lamest things they can do in order to, quote unquote, transform, which is things that they've seen other people do that they think will be profitable.
And I just want to mention, in terms of suffering and equality, Iger was a weatherman in Ithaca. That's harsh. Oh boy, man, give him some props.
I know. Well, unlike LA, there's seasons there, so it changes, and that makes it more difficult. So
Yeah.
all right,
Colder.
all right. Let's go through some super chats and some of your comments. From Babo Yogi for $10. Thank you. Message to Chris. This is just the Chris show right now.
That's
my God. Next time you do a meeting in Vegas, don't pay for Lizzo's lookalike hookers. We know that's what triggered your current condition. Stick with the gilfs and furries. Good piece of advice. Thank you.
It is.
From did we do that one? Yeah, Chris.
No, he sent in another one.
I started this, and now everyone's doing it.
Hey, Chris, if you die, can I get your lava lamp?
Couldn't even go for the extra penny to get it up to 10 Pro. Come on.
From JoePat87 for $4.99. Thank you. When you realize this is the thanks I get. The villain song from Wish strangely fits Iger too keenly. The lyrics are bad enough to make why obvious. Did I read that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I never saw the movie.
Oh boy, I can tell you about that. Chris Gore. Chris Gore, Paul's imitation is accurate. I sound like a retarded Forrest Gump.
Man, that's not right.
In your movie.
Mama always said Strokes was like a box of chocolate.
Oh my God. All right. From Patrick Lemire, it was a mean feat buying up most of the land in Florida before anyone figured it out.
Yep, CIA playlist. Playbook.
Yes, actually.
From Guyver Mecton, bean counters and visionaries are like oil and water. Let's see. Oh, we got the Lizzo comment already. All right. From Pilgrim Media for $2. Horatio Alger, rags to riches still is real. I mean, the way we've been describing Walt, entrepreneur is probably the best word for him. He definitely didn't come to California rich. And then from Bill S. Preston Esquire, there's always a mixture of luck, but success is never just luck. No, absolutely. All right. Hey, let's do this. as we wrap up, give us your final thoughts on today's subject. I'll let anyone just start us off.
Well,
Chris, if you die, can I keep Alan?
Wait a minute. I tossed back the lava lamp request. That's cheating. I didn't know Alan was part of the bundle.
No, nobody. So I'm get dibs.
If Alan lands in the yard sale, I am coming there immediately, and I'll throw in $12.
There you go. I can be bought. Yes.
Yeah.
I can be bought. Yeah.
I'm just going to say, I'm beginning to lose faith that this Bob Iger guy is going to turn it around creatively. So yeah, I think I hinted at it before. I think they like that Walt is dead so that he can't comment on any of the things that they're currently doing. I think they literally seethe inside when they hear Walt would never have done this, or what would Walt think of that? Because what little bit of conscience they have is pricked by that statement, or they're completely desensitized to it. And that's really not something you need to be when you are trading off of someone's name. The further we get from Walt, the less they're attached to the thing that has made them money and made them a multi-generational company that is telling timeless stories that everyone can connect to, that teach us all to be better, not teach us all that we're better than other people.
But the fact of the matter is Walt is gone. And in two cases that I know, based on anecdotal stories, Steve Jobs and Walt Disney, before Eisner came in, Disney was paralyzed by everyone going, what would Walt do? And no one could come up with their own decision. And Eisner laid it out, said, he's dead. I'm running the place. And that was a very important moment, resurrecting the company. So what we're talking about here is what he did needs to be celebrated. But you need to have new Walt Disneys that take it into not new directions. Leadership is a very important thing. And right now there's no leadership. I'll say that.
And if you can't find a Walt, maybe a Lasseter.
Yeah. Yeah, he certainly seemed to fit the bill. And when I was working for Apple, I was in the doldrum years when he was with Next and Steve wasn't there anymore. And I got my fill of people going, well, that's not what Steve would say. No, what would Steve say? And it just drove me nuts. But they could not live without the ghost of Steve Jobs. And the only way to solve that was to bring him back. So that's the only thing I'll say, is that I think it's important to maintain his memory, but to slavishly copy, what he did isn't the answer either. But
right.
I mean, you bring up.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to say.
Yeah, I'll just say.
And I'm not even going to say that, that it's, hey, we want to bring Walt back, or hey, we want to clone him because his head is supposedly frozen and, on Main Street USA. But I think the issue here is that tradition that Walt started in the Walt Disney Company, that torch is no longer being picked up and moved forward. John Lasseter did it, and it stopped with him. And there really isn't anyone that I can see, unless you guys are seeing something that I can't, who is willing to pick that up and, in the true spirit of Walt Disney, push things forward. It's like Disney does not have the guts to do that.
I'll just say that I like Walt and I like turtles. And tomorrow on the Pro Show, we will have a story so spicy about the Walt Disney Company that everyone out there is going to know how far they've strayed from Walt. It's so spicy. I've had to talk to Jonas about exactly how in the world we're even going to cover it. We're gonna go for it, but there you go. That's what I've got to say.
I look forward.
Yeah, it's one where we're thinking about the ramifications of releasing this particular story. So yes, we do have something that
noon Eastern, last show ever on YouTube, folks.
I know what it is. I'm going to reveal it now. Black Girl Gamers is buying Disney. That's what it is. Sorry
it's actually the Mickey Mouse tattoo between your pectacles there. Pectacles, I said, Paul.
I don't have pectacles.
I think it was Michael Eisner. Yeah, like Cheddar was saying, Michael Eisner basically told these guys when he stepped in, you're having a dead guy run your company.
Correct.
Can't really have that happen. And I do agree with that. I mean, if you are attempting to figure out what Walt would have done, yeah,
They're in trouble. My favorite Eisner
people.
quote, I don't know if it's true or not, was he told everybody, if you don't come in on Saturdays, don't bother coming in on Sunday.
To not disagree with you, Paul, but to bounce off of what you said, they've gone a little far in the ignoring of Walt. We brought it up on That Park Place a million times. The fact that they put up these 100-year flags all over the park and important dates in the company, and they put Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1939 on the flag. It's 2 years off. And it's supposed to be a foundational moment.
Yeah. Even Rachel Zegler
the actual
knew the
release
date,
date here.
I think there's a limit of what you can do with the memory of somebody, especially this far removed from their passing. And what I mean by that is I think a drive to have, obviously not a perfect replica, but something of a semblance of Walt's ambition and creativity, outside the box thinking, daring to be something completely different and better. And that was the key thing. Make something that is going to wow people, right? You can't do that with every single piece of business decision, minutia, obviously. What would Walt do? What would Walt do? Because unfortunately, this goes for anybody, Steve Jobs included, over time, people will start imprinting their own personal philosophies on what this person might have done and twisting things and all kind of stuff. So, but I think having a broad scope of, and look, this is what a corporate mission statement is for. The corporate mission statement of Disney should be Walt expressing, this is my vision of what we do, right? And how much that has changed over the years, I couldn't tell you. I'm sure it has. But, I think that's kind of where the fine line is and maybe the line is not so fine. But yeah, I agree. You do have to move on at some point. Otherwise, it becomes stifling. I mean, you can't make a decision. But you've got to have people in there that at least respect who Walt was and understand the vision he was trying to do. And the best that we can ask for people running a company like this now is, if that's the goal, then, the stockholders, the people running the company, ask themselves, are we doing what's right from the vision, the overall vision of what we should be doing? So anyway, that's just me.
Could we be consistent with some of those tenets, with some of those values, with some of those things that really brought us here? I think we can definitely do that. That's for sure. But you're so right, VR. I mean,
just something as simple as this: are we trying to appeal to the American family, or are we now trying to reshape the American family? Which is it now for Disney, right? You see how things can get twisted, and we all can look. We can all take a seat and take a look at a lot of the stuff that Disney is pumping out now in the name of children's entertainment and go, there's no way in hell Walt would have made this crap. It's like, we all know this. It's like, come on. I mean, it's that's when I say the broad scope vision. Like, we know what Walt would and would not have done at that level, right? We can make those decisions pretty damn easy. So,
yeah. You bring up his, the people who came after him. Michael Eisner, driven, at least in the beginning when he first came on board, driven by creativity, driven by the need to do something new and reach a broader audience. When Bob Iger took over, John Lasseter was that guy who took that role. And the only salvation Disney has is to find a creative to step in and say, this is the creative direction the company is going.
That's
in.
me. I'll do it.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't think they want a creative, though.
They don't. No, it's because what happened with Eisner is what's happening now, and it's hunkering down, keeping that stock price where it is, and maintaining value of the company. There's no real idea to grow it at all. They buy companies hoping that to gain assets. They have no idea what to do with those assets. And until that philosophy changes, the company is going to stay and languish where it is today. All right, let's do final chats and then we'll close this thing out. From Babo Yogi for $20, Lorena, send Chris topless selfies to aid in his recovery. Wait, it's for Chris. Chado should do it. Oh, it's for Chris. Chado should do it. So Paul, if you could be so kind and send Chris some topless selfies. Yes, there we go.
Whoa.
We're gonna get Gavin.
Whoa, man, that's white. That was white. Holy shit, that was white.
I'm waiting for the contrast to resolve itself on my monitor.
Oh man,
I know.
I blinded myself. My retinas are shot. Holy
Instant burn-in.
Wow.
The white balance of the stream is off now. All right, from CD Stein 69. Yeah, that was also the downfall of the company as well. Disney was created by the philosophy of Walt that kept it going. Real problem is people that were making the decisions didn't have the same morals. Yeah, okay. From Guyver Mecton, Walt was Disney. There we go.
Couldn't agree more.
And two more here. Thanks. Disney, from Patrick Lemire, Disney's current idea is if you are a fan of classic Disney, Marvel, X-Men, Star Wars, then we don't want you here. Yeah. The idea of they hate their fans. And from Valiant Renegade, I don't know who that is.
Who
for
that
$10.
is?
But thanks for the support. Reading the super chat constitutes a binding contract by which I am buying Alan. Yes.
Are you building that railroad you've always been claiming about?
I know. And at $10, I just feel so cheap. All right. All right. And then finally, thank you to our mods, Atomic Lori, Ms. P. Coffee there in the background, Glenn Glenuccio for helping to produce the show, and for Chris, wherever you are.
Yes, we love you, Chris.
We love you, Chris. And yeah. And I do have the right video lined up to close the show out. So there we go. Let's go around the horn real quick and tell us how we can find you. Vash, start us off.
Yes, well, the best place to find me is going to be at That Park Place, but now we have a new channel, That Park Place Podcast Online, taking highlights from the WW Pro Show and That Park Place, putting them all in one place, along with some exclusive content, including the Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you, taking your questions about Hollywood stories and information, and the Genre Guys, after 90 days of being a member exclusive content on Pro's channel, well, it's coming to T3PO as well. So that is the best place you can find me right now. Tomorrow, we have a live stream at, 3 o'clock Eastern right there. So that should be a lot of fun. Please come check us out because, well, you guys have supported us so amazingly on this show. And we just love producing content for you. So thank you so much, Alan, for having me on.
Well, thank you. All right, Paul.
Oh, me.
Follow that.
Okay.
Follow
I
up.
don't know how you were going to go.
Yeah.
Lots of things happening in my life. I'm actually going to be doing not a live stream, but Dante and I are going to go through Coffee, the Pam Grier movie, and talk about blaxploitation movies and whether, because it's one of my favorite movies. And it's clear why you'll never get another one, but we're going to talk about it anyway. And I'm looking forward to that.
All right, Jonas.
Well, I'm on That Park Place. I am on the WDW Pro Show. I'm a producer for Valiant Renegade. And of course, I have a channel called Everything Woke, where I like to break down all of the, well, do I have to define woke here? We all know what it means. We all know what it means, despite them all asking us to define it all the time. I really, hopefully you can find me on Film Thread again sometime, because this was a blast. Thank you very much, Alan, for having me on.
Absolutely. Lorena.
Well, folks, you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter, causing all kinds of problems. And I think it's only been 10 days since I was last called a racist. So
oh, you're getting better.
Yeah, I'm getting better at it. So getting better at it. But yeah, you can also, of course, find me on YouTube for various videos and live streams, pop culture analysis, theme park walkthroughs. And on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern is my Spice Lounge show, where we bring all the hot topics, the spicy commentary, of course, hanging out with friends. Vash is a regular on that show. And Wednesday, we are going to be talking about Shogun, The finale airs tomorrow, and we are finally going to talk about that whole series in total. So we're going to be talking about Shogun. We're going to be talking about if Alan Ritchson getting diarrhea of the mouth and virtue signaling contributed to the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare doing worse at the box office than it really should have. And also, we're going to be talking about the new trailer from Deadpool and Wolverine. So we're going to talk about that too. So as always, Alan, thank you so much for having me on this awesome panel.
Shogun's dropping at midnight tonight. I don't remember when they dropped.
Yeah, I think it's midnight.
Yeah, I'm staying up.
I think it's midnight. Yeah.
So anyway, Alan, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Chris,
absolutely.
Feel better, or not? I'll take Alan. But no, you can find me over on Valiant Renegade. We'll, every Sunday for the live show we're doing over there at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central, and should have some more videos coming up this week. Jonas, of course, is handling all the videos, the clips from the live shows. Which we're putting more up on the main channel now, which is helping me out a lot. I think doing a lot better. But tomorrow we should have a brand new one ready to go. I'm going to be doing a video tonight with a special guest. We're going to be talking about some more Disney business stuff because it just keeps coming. They're probably about to lose or give up a significant portion of the NBA contract, it's looking like. So, and there's a lot of other players stepping in. I've been talking to some folks, so got a video to do tonight. We'll be talking about that tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. That's going to be a fun. We're about to see over the next 5 years, whole landscape of sports broadcasting rights are going to be radically reshaped. So, yeah.
And Pro, let's end with you.
Well, folks, you can find me on the Pro Show tomorrow at noon Eastern, along with a great panel. And as said before, we're going to be covering a topic that even requires us to strategize how it is we're going to talk about it on YouTube. It's so spicy. And of all the stuff we've ever covered in the past, I think this is one that has the most potential to hit the mainstream media. So tune in for the Pro Show tomorrow at noon. Also doing 3 or 4 videos a day on the Pro channel regularly. And the other place you can find me is I am currently porch pirating Chris Gore's house. He is too slow to catch me right now. The only problem is
my legs don't work too well.
The only items he's had shipped to his house. The only items he's had shipped to his house are insulin and stroke medication. I can't sell this stuff. Anyway,
but I already took the Amazon package with the inflatable girlfriend, so it's too late. Yeah.
Well, I wondered where that box went.
I want to announce that I have found enough change in my couch to buy the WNBA.
By the way, speaking of stroke medicine, our show is sponsored by Blue Chew. All right. Well, I'm Alan. Thanks for joining me for Versus here. Wednesday, my co-host will be Danica, Comic World 19. We're going to talk about Marvel, the state of Marvel. And then on Friday, Dante comes back, and we've got challengers. The Zendaya tennis movie. We're going to talk the hell out of it, and then Boy Kills World. So try to watch this movie.
Hey, and
we'll talk about it on Friday.
Yeah, I'll be with Latino Slant tomorrow going over Bride and Prejudice, an Indian movie.
Oh, very good.
All right, Andrews is in that one.
Yeah, well, again, I want to thank my panel here for a great conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, all hail Walt Disney. And with that, let's get out of here.